7mm. Today it's about 40 degrees, so it's not too bad to just do right out here rather than try to take it into the bench, which is a mess anyway. Wouldn't be much use. So the cover comes off, and then there's a gasket. It almost always is salvageable. If it's not, you probably have to make one, because it doesn't come in the kit. The kit itself comes in a little box like this. WAI Global. It's about 20 to 30 bucks. And there's your solenoid plunger and your spring in there. You reuse the spring, so you save that aside, and you can see how that plunger is a mess, where the copper has worn, and it's got like a little springy action to when it operates to make sure that it pinches good. The symptom on the car, of course, is intermittent starter, and it acts kind of like a bad battery because it arcs and it just doesn't work very good when you try to start it. And so then there's the contacts in there. Got good sunlight here. See how worn that is? So that's the contacts, and we're going to replace them with our new kit, which, as you can see, is got much better thickness there. So I'm going to start taking this apart and see what we need here to take this apart. Looks like we need our ratchet, which has shown up missing. We don't have a deep well 14mm socket. Okay, so we'll just do this. It'll be a lot easier than trying to dig up the 14mm, because the stud's too long, see? So we'll just do this. Some guys have modified a deep well, and if you do 30 of these a month, obviously you could do that, but I'm not going to do that. So just a removal of that nut, and then there's a metal washer, which has got clipped edges. It's not really necessary to worry about the clipped edges. There's an insulator. We'll just set those aside, and we'll just pull that right out of there. And you've got an O-ring, paper insulator, plastic insulator, see them line them up here on your work area. And now this is your contact. As you can see, that contact is just really thin on that. So we've got to get that off there. As you can see, it presses in. The new piece is like that. So let's see if we can figure out how to get that apart real easy. Let's try the nut. Nope, not going to be able to do that. Of course, we could do this. Got a mad puppy dog here. There, that comes right off. just like that. Little trick. So we get rid of that, we get this, put it in the same way, not like this, but like this. Pinch it like that. It should be, pinch it with 2 pair of Nipex pliers. And now we've got the same setup. So, blow the remains out of that thing. Put that on there. Insulator. Plastic insulator paper. O-ring. Put it right back up in there like that. That on there like that. This has got a pin that goes into the casing of the starter. Once again, the clipped washer is not relevant. The clip, I don't know why they have a clipped D-shaped or a clipped washer on there. No real evidence why that is. So now we got our, let's get our special custom-made Irwin vice grip tool. Now here's an important part. We don't want this to be tilted. Okay? So this needs to be loose enough that you can wiggle it a little bit and make sure that it's flat when you tighten it, because that is your contact surface for your solenoid. And if that's at an angle, your contact surface will be reduced because your angle of your piston is not going to match the angle of your contact. So you'll notice the paper is under the contact, and that this is parallel to the insulator here. So you tighten that up like that, and that's your battery terminal. Now you've got your starter motor terminal over here, just kind of got a silicone booty on it. And that is not, that looks like that is a 13 mil. No, it's a 12 mil. Interesting. Just take that off. That comes right off. And your terminal for your starter motor. Now we go back to our patented Irwin tool with the 14mm socket. Get that nut loose. Same configuration as the other side, except the plastic part doesn't have the egg-shaped pin on it. It's just perfectly round, but there's your strange washer that doesn't seem to have a purpose. Your O-ring. And then that just dropped, the bolt just dropped out. So we'll push that aside. Here you've got a contact inside that you have to tend to. This little plate here is part of your contact for your solenoid coil, so you don't want to break anything. There you go. I just got it loose. So now I'm going to leave this black piece right in here. Not even going to mess with it. Then I'll sneak this copper piece out. Sneak it right out. So there's your before and after part there. The one we've already replaced is very worn. I understand the battery terminal one is the one that takes the most abuse. So we'll take this and we'll sneak it back in there. Then we'll put this bolt, which is perfectly square, unlike the other one, which was not perfectly square. And this has no ridges on it, so it doesn't have to be pinched in, swedged in. You just slide that right in there like that. Now we can take our O-ring and our special plastic thing that seals for short circuits there against the case. Our strange washer that doesn't seem to have a purpose for being clipped. I've seen other guys with the they take a socket and they grind a nose on it so it reaches down inside of here. Unlike my patented tool, which is totally flat and 12 point, less desirable than making a 6 point with a nice cone. If you do 30 of a month, you definitely want to make up the socket. So now I've tightened it a little bit, not much, and we'll just kind of tap that. Make sure that it's as flat as you can, and we'll use our patented tool to tighten this nut, avoiding tilting that. Okay, it looks like we did a good job on that. Let's just rough test that solenoid in there. Okay, that looks like it's right what we want to be. And that's what your starter causes your Bendix to pull in, as well as operating the contacts. And then, like we showed on the bad one, it's got a little spring action to it, so that you have a spring tension that automatically aligns this contact with slightly misaligned contacts in here. See how that is? So the slight misalignments that you have there are accounted for with this spring action. So, we'll put the terminal back on. Go back to our other socket size. Put our silicone booty back on there. Put our spring on our solenoid piston. Drop that down in there. Find our worn but reusable gasket. Cover. And there. 7mm bolts. I've heard that, and we'll find out if I'm right, short term, and you won't know long term, but short term we'll find out if the motor is okay. But I understand these Nippon Densos, they last for a long time. The design of the starter, motor, and gearing is well respected in automotive industry. Yeah. Replacing just these parts for a fraction of the cost and an afternoon in the street of labor can save you enough to have a very nice dinner, including drinks. So that's the end of that disassembly. There's our bad parts that we took out. And that is the end of that. So we'll stop our video. Forgot one thing. Put this plate back on, spacer. I understand if you do it wrong, you can tear up your flywheel. So you see the wear, the dirt, that tells you that it goes on like that. So, alright, now we're back right here. We've got our connector for the starter, our unused connector. Okay, we've got our battery terminal connection there. And we've got our wiring harness. We've got our motor mount here. See our motor mount and our oil filter here. And a couple other things in the way. So we need to toss that alternator or that starter right in here. Right in there. So let's see if we get a good picture for doing that. So I'll just pull this harness out of the way. And without upsetting the position of the shim, we've got to get that up in there. And we don't want to upset our wiring harness connectors too much. Okay, the spacer kind of wants to move around a little bit, so that might be kind of a point of contention here. Yeah, the spacer has come off of the pin. So this requires the eyesight in the ends of your fingertips to resolve that. And I think I've got it. I'm looking through the motor mount. Line this up. Okay. Very. You can see in there, there's the spacer, there's the alternator, or the starter, and then there's the hole I'm trying to line up. Kind of a difficult. That's looking through the middle of the motor mount.
Middle of the mount, yeah.
And then here's the starter, close up with light. So I'm going to position that and line that up. Now if you take a look right here, you can see the pin hole on the left, and then the bolt hole on the right, and the starter with the plate slightly misaligned there, and that's what you got to get just right. So it's still not in the right position. But this is to the driver's side of the motor mount. Lower left corner is the harness. So we got to get that lined up. Okay, I discovered a secret. You kind of have to put the starter in at a slight angle. Kind of have to lean it in at a slight angle so you can get past the flywheel, like kind of an angle like this, like that, kind of, so that you can get that tip, that nose around the flywheel in order to get that in. You're trying to get the locking pin in and the plate, spacer plate in just in the right position. And you can tell if you're looking from the driver's side of the motor mount, like I showed before, when it's perfect. There's a shot of the pin slightly misaligned there on the spacer. So you got to get that lined up and then into that upper hole. The lower one here is the bolt hole. Now you can see the bolt is in place, and you can see that the hole where the starter pin goes in is in place. You can't really see the spacer, but then I'm going to hand screw in there now. Got somebody else holding on to the starter. So I'm going to have to use my right hand to wiggle the starter and the left hand to turn the bolt. Now I'm up on top here. I've got that bottom bolt screwed in a little bit. I don't know if the camera will see this, but I'm going to put this other bolt in and hand tighten that. Also, wiggle the starter. The left hand and the right hand tighten that bolt. That thumb and index finger. And see if that gets tightened up nice. Seems to be tightening up nice. Now we get our .14mm socket, long extension. Go in there on that bolt. The bottom one having been tightened by hand a little bit. It's a 14mm or 15mm instead of a 14. Let's go down in there and put the camera here and see if we can see where we've got our socket attached to our lower bolt. We'll tighten that up. That's a 15mm now. tighten them evenly. And this one here we want to tighten until we feel that it's starting to tighten home there. Now we'll go down to the bottom. Do that one. Get that one tight with the socket. Okay, once again you can see this bolt right here. So I'm going to put the light on it right here. Okay, hold the light. Put the socket up in there. Okay, so now we've got our... Okay, so now you can see the socket on the bottom bolt. So we're going to tighten that up. Okay, now you can see the ratchet sitting on the bolt. Clearly there. And there's the indexing pin up there, the hole for it. So that's the, so we're going to run the ratchet now, a 15mm ratchet socket on it. So we can tighten that up. Nice. Now I'll go back top with the long ratchet on it. You see our socket. See our socket attached to the extension and then on the bolt. Turn that and tighten that home. For the final tightness. From the top how that goes in there. The socket is down in here. Exhaust manifold, shield, ratchet, hanging loose. So that's the tightened position now. Okay. Now we've got, by the way, this here nonsense, this big battery wire, during reinstalling of the starter, it got in between the starter and the mounting, and I didn't see it. I couldn't tell it was there, so it took me a while to figure out I had an obstruction there. And then this cable is always in the way. It's always hard to maneuver around it. So we're going to put this back on, and then we've got our 12mm hex nut right here that goes on there. I don't know why it's a 12 instead of a 13, but that's what it is. That's our battery terminal, which is why you have to have the negative terminal of your battery post disconnected when you're doing this job, because you're playing with a gigantic wire And if you short it to ground, it'll arc like crazy. Okay, you don't want to have that around any combustibles. Okay, so here's this red thing pulled back. And so we'll just plug that right in like that. And it hooks. Okay, now you push this little clip thing in and lock it. And that's it. So now we'll get out and up on the top side and do our final connection. This is a spare wire for who knows what that we don't need. Now we're ready to put this is this an air cleaner? This looks like an air cleaner. No, this isn't the air cleaner. This is an air distribution box. Okay. Alright, anyway, so we've got Mancini helping us get this back in. Hook up the two rubber hoses, wiggle it around a little bit. Tighten up the hose clamp over on this side. And the hose clamp up here on the main air intake. And the EGR line. And this one here, somebody lost the T-nuts, the Tinnerman nuts. So those just sat in there. That's the end of that. So hook up our battery. You can hear a few relays clicking as the computer starts to wake up. Now just stay right out here on the engine and we'll just see how she starts. No keys. Nearly brand new performing starter for a minute fraction of the cost of even a rebuild, which at the local store is about $95, and if you get it from the dealer it's quite a bit more than that. The dealer would probably charge twice that or more for parts and labor. Save a couple bucks on this unit here that has 183,918 miles on it. That completes the installation of the rebuild kit on the 2000 Town & Country 3.3 with the flex fuel. Thanks for watching, and this being my first YouTube how-to video, it'll be interesting to see if you got any comments. Happy YouTubing.